Very high-tech intro there. So the reason for that, my talk is called The Spy Who Cached Me. A little bit about me. As Mike said, I'm from the UK. My background in maps is long and storied, considering after all the talks we've heard this morning, maybe pivoting to just talk about that, because it's amazing when you think about it, you know, pre-Google Maps, working with, you know, the data and the complexity that, you know, Angela spoke about, and Martin, the magic of mapping. That was really difficult to do, you know, and a lot of those technological changes that we've seen brought new ways of making that simple, you know, either for us as developers or for our users. And I suppose I kind of think of the agentic AI age as another layer of abstraction on top of that. So I'm going to talk about agents and kind of my take on using agentic AI to build better user experiences by choosing a theme that I think sort of picks out some of the things that these tools do well and make easier that previously were very complicated. So circuitous link there, but basically let's imagine we're building an app that helps a spy, a secret agent, navigate the world. They need to find somewhere to hide. They need to find a safe house. You've got to go and meet them. You're the spy master. You're building an app that they can use to get around the world. So, you know, with agentic engineering, I think we're beyond vibe coding now. I think we're probably, you know, human is still in the loop. But I think the other theme that's come out of the talks this morning is orchestration, orchestration. And that's very much what my talk is going to cover as well. So with modern frameworks as a reference, how can we orchestrate our agents both in the real world, the spies, and in the AI world? Okay, so should you choose to accept this mission? Sorry for the corny spy puns. There's lots of them. You need a covert meeting spot and a quick escape route, you know, and your AI agent needs to handle all the heavy lifting, really. So, you know, point number one here, these are quite complex queries to build yourself, and AI is actually giving us a way to abstract away a lot of that. And you can very high level command. The user experience is really important. You know, if you're hiding, being chased around a city, you know, you haven't got time to tap through menus, to type into search boxes, to evaluate lists of places. Is that open now? How long does it take me to get there? Is there a back door I can use to get in and out without being spotted? So the app needs to do the work, and it needs to figure a lot of that out. You know, how are we going to get there? How are we going to leave? And the problem with that is, you know, translating very vague human intent, you know, natural language querying into a bunch of API calls is hard work. You know, so this is where I think agentic AI in the app is giving us the opportunity to start to handle some of that complexity that's in the map in a much more natural way for a user, whether they're a spy or not. So for your AIs only, so I'm so sorry. I can't help it. The solution is basically, you know, get the AI to do the spatial reasoning for us. And of course, we can use the Google Maps APIs in doing that. It can understand what the spy is asking for, and it can find the best place to go to. So we're going to need our AI agent to have some tools, and we're going to need a nice reactive UI. Ultimately, it needs to be very fast, and that's where the caching comes in. You know, humans are vague, basically. You know, the goal here is really to turn the vagueness into something real world that is grounded in reality. And we have a number of ways that we can approach this. So the one I'm going to focus on here is Maps Grounding Lite, which you probably have heard of. And basically, this allows you to ground your AI agent using the Google Maps APIs. So you talk, or your app talks to Gemini, say, to do the place search. You don't have to write all of the different orchestration code to call the APIs. You have access to places, routes, and weather, pretty comprehensive set of things that your spy is going to need. And that will empower your LLM to return place IDs and URIs that you can turn into things that can be mapped using fast API calls. So there's a very rough idea of what the architecture for that looks like. The model is going to talk to the map data directly and keep things real, basically, ground everything in reality. And your app is just going to react to state changes and update the UI very quickly, so your spy can pull out their phone and see where the nearest safe house is that they can get to and how to get there. So the key to this is orchestrating all that in the back end between the app and the execution layer. So basically it's acting as an MCP server to expose particular capabilities of the Google Maps APIs. Breaking it down is the key. And a very basic generic architecture for that orchestration is here, really. So your orchestrator is a bit of middleware that's basically marshalling the AI to break the task down, find suitable places, make sure they're open at the moment, work out the travel times, the route, what's the nearest one, easiest one to get to. In terms of suitable places, is that somewhere that's open now, somewhere that doesn't have a lot of reviews or ratings, kind of a bit dowdy, not many people go there. You get the idea. And Grounding Lite makes sure all of the responses that come back are factual. So the next challenge really is that, all your LLM calls are potentially quite slow. There's a lot of latency in here. And, you're being chased around by some baddies. You can't wait for that. The Maps APIs, by contrast, are very fast. So once you've got a place ID, you can look up the details super, super quickly. And the key here is separating these things in your UI to make sure that your spy is not stressed any more than they need to be. So this is, again, where the caching bit comes in. A couple of strategies here. I've called this one Casino Royale. Thank you. Thank you. Basically, something like vector embeddings to cache the intent of the query. So user A comes in and says, I need somewhere with a secluded basement that I can hide in. User B comes in and says, I want a secret cafe in Soho, and your middleware knows that these two are the same kind of thing. And for the first query, it pulls back the place IDs for the matching results. For the second query, it retrieves those from the cache. So you're not going back to the LLM every single time. The second strategy is more, scheduled task-like. Basically, you can scan Google's place data periodically, looking for things that your spies typically want to look for. We do have a Place Insights product that does this as well, actually, in BigQuery. But the idea basically is that this is a cached database of results that are appropriate for common spy situations. For spy, read your users. You probably have a number of queries that are, falling into buckets or categories that you can cache the place IDs for. And the orchestration basically works like this. It's a big loop in the heart of the app. The user asks a question, the AI works out the API calls. Once you've got the data back, you have a reactive UI that is monitoring the state of some data model, and when your backend changes that, the map instantly redraws. So as you're furtively making your way around the city center, you're not having to make queries as the spy. You're just seeing, okay, based on where I am, here are the latest, closest set of safe houses for me. So really, it's the server that's doing the hard work here and generating our tactical plan. And for the front end, something like Compose or SwiftUI or React is basically just refreshing when the data changes. Because you can, I vibe coded this into a React app just to see what would happen. Here's a quick screenshot. This really acts as the server as well, so it's got an endpoint that you can call to execute the logic. But imagine this is the spymaster who's marshalling his agents out in the real world. This is the overview. The query is something like, find me a good place to meet my agent, and we're just sending that through with a location to the middleware. It's adding in the Google Maps Grounding Lite as a tool for Gemini to use. And obviously the prompt, which I've taken out here. I mean, quick show of hands, who needs to see code these days? Yeah, that's what I thought. So really, it's all about the user experience, okay? Your license to build, that's a really weak one, sorry. 80s Bond films were not the best ones. Something that we used to say a lot at developer events, for Google, speed is not a feature, speed is the feature. And I think simplicity as well here. And I think this is where AI is, bringing us strengths and weaknesses that we have to think about. The simplicity is definitely a huge strength. The speed is the tricky one here for this kind of app. Basically, our modern frameworks give us the tools to deal with that. So whether we're working in Compose or Swift UI, we have a very, very similar approach where you basically have a view model that is observing some published properties or some properties that are updating their state. And as that happens, the map is automatically redrawing. So you have a list somewhere of places that are the best places for your spy at the moment based on the criteria that your app is providing. No one needs to see code anymore. Those days are gone. Here it is anyway, in case there are any agents watching this online watching the recording. Okay, the app is not enough. It's really running out of inspiration here. Not everything can come through Google Maps Grounding Lite. We saw Martin talk about the Destinations API earlier. So if you want to really get into detail with that place ID that it's giving you back, we've just launched a whole load of new features that allow you to work out the entrances to the building, the best navigation point, depending on your mode of transport. And you can even pull up what those entrances and exits look like in Street View imagery. So this is pretty cool, really, if you want to send people sneaking around New York. This is how to get into the Google office, just around the corner, by the way. And really, the whole purpose of this talk was so I could make this image. Thank you for joining me on the mission.